If I had a secret sauce, it would be absolutely focus on what you want. Focus on what you want to become, and damn the torpedoes. Don't let anything get in your way of doing what you feel like you're here to do. And you're not in the game until you get smacked in the mouth. You're not in the game until you taste your own blood from the sound of no, do not call me again. You're not in the game in football, right? The game doesn't start until you get smacked. That's when the game starts, and that's when you lock in. That's like life, right? You need to be rejected. You need to triumph. You need to brush off your shoulder, rub some dirt on it, whatever the analogy is. You got to do that and get the hell back on the horse immediately before your brain can signal to the rest of your body, ow, that didn't feel so good.
Benztown President Dave Chachi Dennis loves radio and all of his radio friends.
Hey, Chachi.
Hey, everybody.
Because Chachi loves everybody.
My first guest knew on the first day of interning for the legendary Bruce Walton he wanted to pursue a career in media. He's served as the sales manager for Radio Disney, the LSM for Extra Sports Los Angeles, the GSM for KFI, the GM for KYSR 98.7, and the DOS for iHeart's 8 stations in San Diego. In 2010, he founded Epic Media, where he consults restaurants, casinos, and fintech. He also represents media talent and influencers and advises audio networks and digital agencies. Please welcome Brad Samuel.
Hey, Chachi, how are you?
Buddy, it is so good to see you. Brad and I worked together almost 20 years ago. Is that possible? Yeah, that is possible.
Yeah, when I'm sitting there thinking about our crow's feet and wrinkles, I definitely think that is possible. It could be even 30 years ago, based on appearance. But I think you're right. It was about 30 years ago.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't believe how fast time has gone by. I remember when I became, I thought I was a hot shot and I was really cool, and I was driving. I bought myself a Porsche 911 and drove it into the parking garage, and you had texted me and you're like, "Nice sled."
Yeah, it was a nice sled. In fact, I remember that. I think we were both coming into our own at that point at that time in our life. Those little things kind of were nice trophies.
There you go. You had a really cool 740 BMW, if I remember right.
It was many in the line of cars that probably ended up getting crashed or rear-ending somebody. I think there was something like that along the line.
Tell me a little bit about growing up. You were the son of a furniture retailer.
Yeah. I may have been one of the luckiest kids alive. Not only did I have two just incredibly great parents who cared and put my brother and myself ahead of them, but they were in retail. They were in business in San Diego. And, I got a master's degree in business by the time I was 15 because it was real life. And, I heard my mom say one thing to my dad every day when he came home from work. It was, how much did we do today? and that I think may have made an impression on me that it's really important to make money and create revenue and have your business thrive, because it actually made a difference in people's lives. It made a huge difference in mine. If my parents had a good year at the furniture store, I might have been able to get a new surfboard. If it wasn't such a good year, I was riding the dinged up thing with duct tape and missing a skeg. So I was really, really lucky, and I got through that experience the opportunity to meet so many interesting people from different fields, from retail to media, and the guys and gals that just made me smile were people that were in media.
And your parents were entrepreneurial.
Yeah, I would call it that. My dad worked for a big corporation and then said, hey, I'm going to go out on my own. And, I don't know if opening an unfinished furniture store in San Diego by today's standards, counts as entrepreneurial, but it certainly was then. He took a risk especially like, what, unfinished furniture? You mean I've got to finish this myself? But yes.
Yeah, so the people that would go in to buy this furniture, they would then have to stain it and paint it or whatever they were going to do with it.
They had to do something with it, or our company had to. And because I was working around the business, as most kids whose families own a retail operation do, I learned a lot of that stuff. I learned how to stain. I learned how to sell. I learned how to take customer complaints, because God knows we never got any of those in media, Chachi.
Right.
There was never a complaining client or listener of anything. So, I don't know what I did with that skill, but I was really, really lucky. And I just saw these media people come in and see my dad. And I was like, they had something. They had the drip, man. They had the vibes, and, they all looked like they were, happy and, kicking ass. And so, I was sort of attracted to that. And it was where my eye went, instead of, would you like to see this rocking chair in a different color? That wasn't going to be my journey. It was going to be media.
Okay, so they would come in and ask your dad, or try to sell your dad on buying a schedule on the air to market his furniture store.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was crazy. Like, they would come in, they would take my dad to lunch. He would come back, oddly enough, smelling like a martini. I didn't understand. And I was like, Dad, what is that? And he's like, Brad, that's media. And I'm just like, shit, I think I can do that. Dad, this might be for me. And so at about 15 years old, I got the chutzpah to ask Bruce Walton for an internship. The road kind of began there.
Well, KCBQ, obviously a legendary radio station, and Bruce Walton, a legendary talent. How did you get the introduction to him in the first place? So
he would come in and be one of those guys being like, hey, Renee, you wouldn't want to happen to buy some 60-second spots, would you? And I knew his brother, Bill, the legendary NBA and college Hall of Famer from basketball camps. And so we knew the family. My dad kind of saw that interest in me. I used to make, this will surprise you, up dirty versions of commercials at our dinner table when I was a kid. Like, I would take a rhyme, and let's just say pervert it a little bit. And my mom and dad, instead of just smacking me, they said, that wasn't appropriate for the dinner table. However, perhaps one day you'll be in advertising. And I was just like, yeah, I don't know, whatever, and I'd say whatever I shouldn't say again. But Bruce would come in, he'd try to sell my dad. And my dad said to me, I was working at a corner deli, for like $1 an hour down the street. I knew I had to make some money, buy my own car. That wasn't going to be something my parents did for me. So my dad said, hey, maybe you can ask Mr. Walton for an internship. And I said, Dad, internships are free, and I need to make some money. And he goes, how much are you making an hour right now? I said, I think like $1.32 or something like that. I don't even know if I'm getting paid, but I just, it's a little bit. And they said, if you can get an internship, we'll pay you $2 an hour. And that was my parents' way of incentivizing me to do something that might have a career track. And so I called up Mr. Walton, and I said, Mr. Walton, did you, Dad, what was that thing called? An internship. Yeah. Can I have an internship, around the radio station? I've got a good work ethic. I'll do whatever you want. And Brad, sure, come on in. Let's talk about it. Now, I didn't realize that my dad said, Bruce, whatever you're selling, I'm buying. Just give my kid an internship. I thought I was, I kind of thought I was fancy, and I went in and went in the first day, and Bruce said to me, you're going to be around everything. You're going to be around marketing. You're going to be around sales. You're going to be around programming. You're going to be around promotions. You are going to touch every department of this radio station, and you'll see if you like any of it. And I fell in love with it, Chachi. I just fell in love with it. My mom picked me up at the end of the day. Remind you, I'm 15, and she picks me up in the Country Squire red, with wood panels.
My parents had one of those. A station.
I think every parent, if they were a parent, had one of those. And she goes, "How did it go?" And I said, "Mom, I know what I want to do. I want to be in radio." I want to own a radio station. I think this is so cool. I know what I want to do. And she goes, that's incredible. But don't you think you might want to like know how to add and subtract and maybe pass an English class or something? I wasn't doing great in school. And I said, Mom, they look like they have assistants to do stuff like that. And so she just rolled her eyes. She just rolled her eyes like, this kid. And, sure enough, outside of ownership, that's when, multi-station ownership came in. I didn't do any of that, but I got really blessed to be able to sell, manage, and be around some amazing people for a long time.
And early on, you were more excited about the business side of it, the sales side, as opposed to the programming or being on air?
Yeah, it was weird. People said, you've got pretty good pipes. Maybe you should be on air. And it just didn't interest me. I loved the idea of sales and marketing and management. And I was really taken to sort of more of the executive side of the business than the talent side. And also, if you're going to be talent, you got to be talented. And I didn't have it, man. I didn't have it. And so I went the sales and management route. And, here we are, a number of years later.
It was fortuitous that you chose that lane, I think, in a lot of ways. I think you've obviously gone on to be incredibly successful, and I'm sure you could have done both very, very well, but you chose the right path 100%.
I chose the right path for me. And that's what I try to suggest to people that might be a little younger than myself as they're sort of thinking about their career path. If you weren't paid $1, what would you do for your life? What kind of work would you want to do? And I'd want to be, like convincing people of something. I'd want to be doing something that used my degree of creativity and problem solving. And so, I picked the right thing for me. And, I think that's the thing, right? What turns you on? If you had to do something for the rest of your life and get up at 4 a.m. to go do it, what would you go do? And oddly enough, at 15, I said this was for me.
About a year or two later, after you work at KCBQ with Bruce Walton, you get a job at KUSI, which is a TV station in San Diego. What was the transition like to go from radio to TV?
It was interesting. It was really, really interesting. I was really lucky. We also knew a family called the McKinnon family that just bought KUSI from U.S. International University or something like that. It was like Mike stole the thing, and he had an idea to launch the 10 o'clock news. And so I wanted to see what television was like. And so kind of similar to the Bruce situation, we reached out to Mr. McKinnon and said, hey, will you give my kid an internship? I'll buy whatever you're selling. And I started helping put together the first 10 o'clock news in San Diego. I'll tell you about who I did it with in a second, because he was a character and he made an impression on me. But what you're asking about is the difference, right? And to me, the level of creativity in audio, as we call it today, but radio then, right? And radio still now, you had to be like your own agency, right? You had to be on the fly, making creative things happen. It was intangible. It wasn't like a TV spot we could produce for someone, they could show everyone. I had to listen to it. And so there was a level of creativity and ballsiness that I don't think existed in television at that time. The radio people had it. The TV people, some of them had it. But I was lucky enough to work for a guy while they were putting together the 10 o'clock news by the name of Rod Luck. He was a legend in San Diego, a bit infamous as well. And he could be a bit of a son of a bitch. But what he said to me one day sticks with me, and it sticks with me to this day. I think I'm now 16 or 17 years old, and all of my friends are down at South Mission Beach playing volleyball, maybe drinking. I don't know. That's a rumor. Yeah. And I was my head was somewhere else. My head was kind of probably with my friends down at South Mission Beach. And he could tell. And he looked at me and he pulled me aside and said, hey, if you don't bring your A game every single day, don't come in. you bring people down. And it stuck with me. It was sort of my first talking to as an intern. And it made an impression that if you don't bring it every day, go home. Just do it, try again tomorrow. But don't do anything half-assed. And I got that from Rod, and I got that from my experience in television.
You certainly had the maturity to take that advice, take it to heart, and act on it. And probably a lot of people at that age wouldn't. They'd just be with their buddies hanging out at Mission Beach on the beach, playing volleyball or whatever they were doing. So maybe that came from your parents or your own intuition. I just still think it's pretty cool that you took it seriously.
Yeah, well, my first intuition was don't get thrown out of the place. That's not gonna particularly go well, over anywhere. But someone said something to me that, like, if you work your ass off for no money at all as an intern, imagine how hard they think you might work for $1. And, he checked me, and it sits with me to this day, these little things. And I wish he was still around so I could tell him that. But it was meaningful, and maybe a bit of maturity, but probably more just fear. It was probably just fear. I didn't want to piss my parents off, and I certainly didn't want to piss off Rod. He could go bananas.
After being at KUSI, you come up here to LA. You have a major in RT/VF management major at CSUN. And so you graduated high school after 2 great internships where you learn radio and TV. You come up to LA to CSUN to go to school. And so you're up here. Are you focusing solely on school at that point, or are you still?
No, I mean, I was solely focused on having a great time.
Okay.
And was in a fraternity. I was a pike at Cal State Northridge, and that was a bit of an infamous sort of Animal House style. Yeah. And if it had anything to do with anything other than going to actual class, I was all about it. Midnight runs to Tommy's Burgers, and probably slightly impaired, and I had the best time ever. But the classes that interested me were, of course, things that were radio, television, film management oriented. And as much as I joke about Cal State Northridge being like 13th grade, Cal State school or something like that, I actually got a pretty amazing experience because so many of our professors were actually people in the industry. There were people that were working at NBC. There were people that were working at ABC. They were working at Disney. They were all working in the Valley, right? And they were all working in LA, and they were actually professionals. They weren't theoretics, right? And it was pretty cool to do that. And so I tried to get through school as quickly as possible with the least amount of work, which may have led once or twice to looking at my co-students' papers during tests. I'm just saying it may have happened once or twice, but I got in and out in about 4 years because I knew I probably had a job waiting for me back in San Diego in radio with Bruce.
We have here at least 3 CSUN graduates, and they've been incredible. Masa, our VP of Operations and Affiliate Relations, Suzanne, our Marketing Director, and I have been very happy with all the CSUN graduates that we've hired. I think it's a really good school.
If you go to this is an opinion, but you go to a state school, you know how to grind. Most people, have to work while they are going to school. It's not a lot of research. It's a lot of, real practical application. And, again, as much as I like to have fun at the expense of my alma mater, I really do think that, people that come out of that school, they know how to get after it. Because, competing in that environment, and I just mean getting a class. I don't even mean competing with other smart people, because I don't know if there are any other smart people. It's sheer girth, right? It's getting through it was hard. And so it doesn't surprise me to hear you say that.
You graduate, you enjoy all that LA has to offer, and a few Tommy's Burgers, and I'm sure a few times on the Sunset Strip, and to all the great nightclubs and so forth. You go back after graduation, and you get your first now like real gig at as an AE at Kiffam, which is the smooth jazz station, working for your mentor again, Bruce Walton. Tell me a little bit about just your first day of work, and now how that went. You've got to start selling.
Yeah, it was a dream come true. I mean, it was literally a dream come true. And, Bruce made me interview. He made me go through the thing. And, I appreciated that. But my first day, our sales manager, a woman by the name of Scotty Marash, who was freaking amazing, is like, okay. And she was there at KCBQ when I was there as a local sales manager. So she knew me a little bit, but she's like, hey, okay, we're going to, do some training, and we're going to talk about, how we make calls and how we do all that. And, I said, well, that's great, but I already made about 5 of them. And, I've got an appointment later this afternoon. So we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to do that like maybe tomorrow or something. And she looks at me and she's like, what the hell? And she's like, well, you don't know what to do yet. And I said, Scotty, I was an intern for you guys for a while. I watched these people do this stuff. And where I don't know the answer, I'm just going to say, I don't know. Let me get back to you on that. But it's not about what I'm selling. It's about what they need. So I'm going to take a lot of notes. I'm going to ask a lot of questions about their business. And then I'm going to come back to them with a plan that they're going to say yes to. And she just looked at me and she was like, this kid is either delusional or high. And I mean, and I may have been both. But it worked out. And
that's that's astonishing.
But I knew what to do because of the internship. I felt comfortable in San Diego because of growing up here and my parents knowing so many people. And so I just started smiling and dialing, and just going and saying, hey, it's Brad Samuel. Remember me? I met you when I was a little kid. I'm a KIFM smooth jazz. It's music for the neck up and waist down. And they're like, what is this bullshit coming out of this kid? And, I heard that from another AE that morning. And so, I just, picked it up. I think I'm a sponge. I don't think there's an original part to me. It's all just totally taken and stolen from other people.
It sounds like you were a quick learner. Did you pick up on things, quickly? You said you weren't a great student. Was that just because you weren't applying yourself? You've obviously got to be incredibly intelligent. And I think a lot of people at that age, even at our age now, would be so fearful at rejection. And, and I know making those calls and getting those no's. How did you, I guess that's a 2-part question.
Yeah. The first part, Chachi, is we all learn in different ways, right? So I was never a great book learner, reading, comprehending, retaining, not really my thing. But if you said something to me like music for the neck up and waist down, I'd be like, it just would stick. And so, maybe I learned quickly by listening and watching more than, what a humanities class might teach or an art history class. And it was sort of like that was the appealing thing to me. If I liked it, I would do well at it. If I didn't, like all of us, right? We just aren't very good at the stuff we don't like because we don't try hard. And so I think that was sort of how that started. And as far as fear of rejection, I knew it was a numbers game. I knew it wasn't personal. I knew that make a game of it and see how long it took to get your first order. And then how long would it take to get your next order? Could I cut the time down? And, I just didn't fear rejection. And probably some of that is just ignorance. I'm dead serious. Probably a little dense. Never concentrate on what you might not be able to do because it then grows bigger. Just focus on winning and manifest that. And that is something that if I was to say that if I had a secret sauce, it would be absolutely focus on what you want. Focus on what you want to become and damn the torpedoes. Don't let anything get in your way of doing what you feel like you're here to do. And you're not in the game until you get smacked in the mouth. You're not in the game until you taste your own blood from the sound of no, do not call me again. You're not in the game in football, right? The game doesn't start until you get smacked. That's when the game starts, and that's when you lock in. That's like life, right? You need to be rejected. You need to triumph. You need to brush off your shoulder, rub some dirt on it, whatever the analogy is. You got to do that and get the hell back on the horse immediately before your brain can signal to the rest of your body, ow, that didn't feel so good.
Do you think some of that, you talk about being ignorant, was that instilled, that philosophy, by your parents in you? Or do you feel that came kind of just naturally?
I think it came a little bit naturally, but my parents always said you learn the most from failure, never from winning. You don't learn anything from winning. It might feel good, and that's the fruit of the labor, but you don't learn anything from winning. You win from losing. You learn from losing. You actually win from losing, right? I didn't mean to say that, but now that I think about it, you really do win from losing if you have the right mindset of rinse and repeat, get back up and go. Do not hesitate.
You are accelerating. You're apparently kicking butt right now at Kiffum, and you got your first appointment before you've even been trained. This is the era of consolidation, and Kiffum's acquired by Jefferson Pilot, and all of a sudden you've got Kson and KZBT as part of the cluster there in San Diego. So now instead of just selling for one station, you're selling for three. It sounds like you'd worked obviously at a few different formats already in television, but did you find that kind of challenging to sell different formats, or was it easier because now you had different options?
Yeah, so I never really thought of them as formats. I just thought of them as real estate, right? I suddenly, I had one piece of real estate. Now I had three, and all of them were really good beachfront pieces of real estate as they were in the day. And so to me, I was just excited. I was like, okay, this one wears a cowboy hat, and, this one wears a beret, and this one wears no hat at all. Right. And so, no, I was really excited. And to me, everyone felt all this pressure because now they needed to perform. And I was like, oh my God, this pressure is selling something shitty. This was selling three great things with great people. Mike Stafford, Bruce Walton. These guys were just absolute legends. And the sales staff was just fun. And this sounds probably a bit sick, but it is true. I liked competing against more people. I liked competing against people. Kson was this far and away number one radio station in San Diego at the time, and for a long, long time. And so a lot of their salespeople were like, well, I'm the shit. And then I was just sitting there like, you are, and I'm going to knock that smile right off your face. And so, again, a little narcissistic probably, but that was how I looked at it. I looked at it as opportunity, not as, this is a lot.
It's a great perspective and a great way to frame it. The beachfront property and just all slightly different styles, but all
just a
very
different
coveted
house,
real estate.
right?
Yeah.
But it was all great real estate.
Really good analogy. Were the other AEs, the more senior AEs, were they threatened by you? Was there some tension in the station?
Well, I'm going to say that I probably came in a little hot. And so I'm going to say that anything that was tension driven was probably me poking at stuff and accounts that maybe I shouldn't have been, or, didn't deserve to be at that time. But I didn't know what that word meant. I just knew I'm sitting in front of the client and you're not, and they're saying yes to me and they're not saying yes to you. What are we talking about? Right. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, there was probably a little bit of tension, but my best experiences were with a lot of those veterans who took an interest in me and said, hey, you might have something. And it's why I paid that forward. Whenever I saw a young AE come in or somebody coming up, I always wanted to spend a few minutes with them, take my time with them, put my arm around them, listen to them and say, hey, you can do this. because it does take a village of people to support you. Beyond your parents, beyond your management, it takes an entire community. And I was lucky that more people gave me a moment than cast me aside.
We are, I think, both collectively very fortunate to have such amazing mentors around us in our careers. However, even given the relationship that you had with Bruce and doing an internship with him a few years before, I'm guessing being the junior AE or early on in your career, it was probably just eat what you kill. It wasn't like you were given a list. Everything that you had to go out was really go and get it.
I was never given a list, even as a senior AE, because I was a hunter-gatherer. That was what was in my nature. And we all wanted the easy account, but, and I wouldn't have minded if I got some, and I'm sure I asked for them, but they always said no. And they didn't want to take me off of the, smile and dial detail, right? They wanted me to keep ripping the phone, right? And that's what I did. And you know what? It's why I out-earned a lot of folks, because they were getting paid agency rates, right? And I was getting paid new business direct rates. And for people that are listening to this that are in sales, there was always a disparity between what came over on a fax machine or now today email and the stuff where you went out and you had to eat what you kill. And by the way, that still stands today in my consultancy. I mean, it's all about hunting and gathering. Those who can do for themselves tend to do okay. And that's something that I've always tried to share with folks. Don't rely on someone else to make your meal. You've got to go kill it. You gotta go hunt it. You gotta kill it. You gotta bring it home. You gotta clean it, and then you cook it. You do not rely on someone else. The minute you rely on somebody else for your livelihood, you're screwed.
So true. You become dependent on economic cycles,
right.
And one client going away, and that could be almost everything for you. So I think that is so true. You become sales manager of a newly launched Radio Disney station. So now, you're still incredibly young at this juncture. You're now managing a sales staff. Walk me through that transition. And did you like it, or was it stressful?
I loved it. Yeah, I loved it. It was what I wanted. I wanted to be the manager of KIFM, but Bruce was still there, and it wasn't going to happen. And so Mike Stafford, I think. He was the GM of over the whole cluster. I was like, Mike, I want to be in management. Mike, I want to be in management. Mike, I want to be in management. I think to shut me up and give me a taste of shut up, he gave me Radio Disney AM 1240. Mind you, this is like a 50-watt community channel AM. Like a cigarette lighter had more flame to it than that tower. And so, I looked at it and people are like, Radio Disney, like, what's that? And I quickly got the idea that if I went forward with, like, this is Radio Disney, it'd be a great big whatever burger. But what I did was said, we're going to look at this differently. And I didn't share this with the people at Disney. They probably wouldn't have cared for it, but I reversed engineered it. We were the Disney company's radio marketing division. Doesn't that sound different?
I like that.
And so what I said was, we're just the local radio company that you've grown up and loved with Disney. We're just the radio portion of it. And so I got a couple of newbies, sales reps under me, and it was us against the world. And I remember talking to a really big client. It was Dryers, because I wanted to do this school program. And they're like, oh, yeah, we hear you guys up here. It was in L.A. And it was Radio 710, now ESPN, but it started as Radio Disney, after a number of format changes. And I was just like, they literally think I'm from this big radio station, and I don't think I dissuaded them. I let them think whatever they wanted. But, the idea was going out, being hyper creative. We created the Radio Disney Dryers Dairy Mobile, which would go to schools and pass out dairy, milk and yogurt chugs and ice cream. And, we gave people real integration into the brand. I think the people at Radio Disney were like, this guy's dangerous. He's scary. Like he's going to sell an appearance by Mickey Mouse. Right. And, if I was there long enough, I probably would have.
But that was really ahead of your time too. I mean, you were creating at that point a social media moment with this truck going around delivering ice cream, way before social media and something like that could even be shared virally.
Yeah, it was all about like, can you touch people, right? How could you connect with your consumers in an authentic, experiential way? And, Radio Disney was actually great at that. And it really served as a great training ground for what was my next venture and going up to LA and selling Extra Sports, which, was, I think, 37th on the ranker, and there was only like 36 radio stations in LA, right? We didn't have ratings, but we had ideas and we had concepts and we had cool IP. That was what Radio Disney prepared me for. It was an invaluable experience.
So radio legends, Roy Laughlin and Charlie Rahilly are running the Clear Channel cluster, and this is where we meet. I actually moved up in 2000. You moved up just a year before me. So we've known each other for almost 25 years. My God. You come up here at the time. It's the number one, I think, grossing market. This was, let me take this. It was still J-Core when I came up. So did J-Core own Extra at that point?
It just had become Clear Channel.
Clear Channel.
It was a hot second.
Right. Okay. So you move up, and Roy is incredibly charismatic. Roy is I'm supposed to interview Roy at Radio Days here in a couple weeks, and Roy's just brought me up as well. It's hard to describe Roy. My ex-wife Carrie, who you know well, called Roy a peacock, and that's exactly what Roy is. Roy walks into this room, and you feel it. He's very charismatic, and I think one of the best salespeople, on the planet. And I think the two of you just must have been an amazing force. Did you immediately like each other, or what was that meeting like?
I immediately was in love. I mean it. So, you've said, Roy, like a peacock, and Roy, I'm going to say, is my second mentor. After Bruce, it was 100% Roy. He wasn't just a peacock. Good looking, charismatic, sharp dressed, but he was freaking genius. And I know a lot of people were like, that was a lot of genius for them to digest, because it was one idea after the next idea, after the next idea, after the next idea. And he was relentless. He was up early. He went to bed late. And it was, not for everyone. But if you wanted to win, there is nobody, I mean, absolutely nobody, that you could be better mentored by. And then, you use your own filter. Okay, I want that. I want to pull that part from Roy. I want to pull that part from, Bruce Walton. I want to pull that part from Scotty. I want to pull that, and we'll get to, Charlie. All these guys were, and women, which I loved about our industry. There were so many kick-ass women in this business that just, they had the stuff, man. You had to have the stuff. There was no charity cases. You either killed and kicked ass, or you got your ass kicked and killed. That was iHeart. That was Clear Channel.
Clear Channel.
In fact,
so well put. I remember coming up here, and they say when someone from baseball makes it to the major leagues, and they call it getting to the show, and that's what I felt like. Like all of a sudden, you are in the show. The pressure increased. The skill set around you was just so freaking good. The programmers around you, the salespeople around you, the air talent. It was just at the highest level. It was
next level. And what I loved, my first day, Randy Michaels was in the radio station. He comes over. He's like, "Hey, it's great to finally meet you. Bobby." This is Bobby Lawrence. He helped recruit me. It was like, it tells me you're a maniac. You're a wild man, and stuff like that. I'm like, hearing wild man from Randy Michaels. It's like, no, dude, I'm not a wild man. You are a wild man. But he said something that was awesome to me. He said, "You're not going to be in this job in a year." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "You're either going to get promoted or fired." So, I love that. And that was so Roy, right? You aren't going to stay in that job for a long time. You are either going to get promoted or fired. I'm either going to promote you or I'm going to fire you. But it's all up to you. It's not up to me. So good luck, right? And that was like, I loved that opportunity to have destiny in my own hands. Like I just loved it. And I'm probably gushing too much about Roy, but I swear to God, like, Bruce and company in San Diego, they knew how to hit, if you're a tennis player, you'll get this analogy. They knew how to hit slice. They knew how to finesse the ball. They were smooth operators. They were like the mayors of town, right?
Right.
Roy, all topspin. Boom, 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 and screw with us, and I'm going to cut you. And the way he went after, like, I thought it was crazy, but the way he went after K-Rock, I mean, it was legendary.
Yeah.
It was just, I love Tripp, but he was torturing Tripp, with the stuff that he would do, and it was like, is this even okay? But you have to learn how to, use the carrot and the stick. Right. I learned the carrot from my early formative years, and then I learned the stick from Roy.
And he was a master. You were talking about the Dryer's ice cream mobile, and Roy was just the master of those types of events. Wango Tango, Payer,
right. It's one of one for sure.
Yeah. So Randy's right. You are promoted, and so now you become the GSM of KFI. So the number one talk station in Los Angeles, gigantic, legendary staff. You got Rush, you've got John and Ken, you've got Handel. I mean, what was that like?
It was awesome. And what I loved was it felt like kind of coming home for me. One of the formats that my dad used at Pinocchio's Unfinished Furniture was News Talk in San Diego. There was a station called KSDO. It became Kogo, but he used a guy by the name of Roger Hedgecock, who I ended up, oddly enough, being his agent.
No kidding.
Working with Roger for about 7 or 8 years. And Roger would do spots, endorsements for my dad. And whenever Roger did spots for my dad, whatever he was doing a spot about sold. And I knew that News Talk Radio had the ability to reach, obviously, aspirational, informed, high purchasing power, upscale educated audience. But I loved the nature of the endorsement, the ability to sort of say, I believe in this furniture company. I believe that, I got a dresser from them. You should too, right? And so being able to then do that on steroids with Handel, Dr. Laura, and Rush. We didn't have John and Ken at the time. David G. Hall made it his mission to bring back John and Ken. I think we had a show in the afternoon called Carell and Andrew, which was really different for the station because they were very liberal on a very conservative, especially at that time, station. And I think that, David had the absolute genius of going, let's make this thing really whole again. Let's bring back John and Ken, and, selling them was like, one of the easiest things in the world. So it was neat. It was super neat. But again, it wasn't a ratings play. Those were big audiences, but nobody, none of the agencies would buy us. So it just kind of went back to shaking hands and kissing babies with business owners and asking them about what they needed to be successful, not selling our ratings and our big ego and our, 50,000 clear watts, clear channel watts. You can hear us, in the Bay Area at night. It wasn't about that. Shut your mouth and listen. I think we did a good job of that at KFI, and we were given a lot of opportunity to do business with a lot of local businesses, and that just turned me on to no end.
And going back to that beachfront real estate analogy, you have now sold CHR, you have sold a country, smooth jazz, sports, Radio Disney, which I guess we would call that young CHR, something along those lines. And now you're selling talk, and you do every one of those formats wildly successfully.
It went okay. It went pretty well. Right? I mean, and by the way, a part of that is approach, of course. Part of that's luck. Part of that is getting with the right people that support your crazy visions. I remember telling Roy and Charlie, I'm at KFI and Greg Ashlock, because Greg was just promoted to co-market manager with Roy or with Charlie, or I forget exactly. But, I said, I'm going to tell Western, which was the world's biggest media buying service at the time, I'm going to say, we're not open for business. We're not taking your money. We're going around you because you just keep saying no to us. Like, that could have been career suicide. But I had people, including John Hogan, back me up and say, I'll listen to the angry phone calls from Amy Nizich or whoever, Kathy Begley. I mean, these people were pissed. I was like, we're not doing business with you. And
so they would call and they would want a place to buy, and you said no.
No, they wouldn't. They'd call and they'd give us a request for proposal and we'd put it forward, and then they wouldn't buy it. And they'd say, well, Laura's a no buy and we can't buy Rush. And I was like, screw you guys. It's a wild goose chase. I'm just going to call Mercedes myself. I'm just going to call the regional person at Name the Company USA. I don't care. And I'm going to introduce myself. And I'm the, head of sales at KFI. I want to come out and talk to you about your challenges and come up with some bespoke shit that is going to help you move the needle and actually sell stuff, and people were like, sure, come by, and so, it was, again, just, it felt like coming home because it was dealing with the business owners.
And you got the support from management.
I got the great support. They, and if I didn't have that, Chachi, that would have been a suicide mission. In LA, saying no to big agencies. I mean, 93% of the business was agency driven.
Yeah.
We only had 10 spots an hour.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But we only had 10 spots an hour. Well, I'm fill them up with people that want to be here, not people that just want the lowest price and we're all a commodity.
You're doing great at KFI. I mean, and these are fantastic years in general. Yeah. I was having such a great time there, and the cluster was doing amazing. We had just high level talent and management. It was a lot of fun. Now you're promoted to become the president / general manager of 98.7, which is now right next door to me at KBIG.
Right.
And again, a whole new format because it's a hot AC kind of transitioning into alternative that time.
Yeah, and here's something to note. Every one of these stations, other than what I sold in San Diego, were distressed, meaning they were tough sells. Extra Sports, highly conceptual and a totally cost per point driven transactional market. KFI sounded good, but we were 26th in rankings with a lot of no Rush, Laura dictates. Star, as sexy as it sounded, and it super was, just lost Ryan Seacrest to going and replacing your friend and mine, Rick Dees.
Right.
And so, it was sort of, I didn't realize it at the time. I think they were just a number of suicide missions that I didn't get blown up in. And it, cause it was like, they're like, Brad, it's not going to be like, KFI, you're kind of, you fixed it. It's turned around. It's, I think we were doing like, it was like 27 million, me and Jeff Thomas. And, and we built it up with Greg Ashlock to be like 53 million. I mean, it was crazy. It's like, what, you want to step off of this to go do that? I'm like, well, I want to be a general manager. I want to see if I can do it. Right. And it was an awesome staff of people.
Let's talk about Star for a second, because not only, and you're right, you were thrown into these very challenging positions, and I hadn't even thought about that. But with Star, you're now formatically in between. It was really Coast, KISS, KBIG, and Star. So these are all female-targeted radio stations. You've got let's call it a notorious morning show. There was Jamie and Danny, and
so good.
And Stretch and those guys, and wildly talented, but also gigantic personalities.
Just a wee bit.
So you've managed account executives, and obviously A's can have big personalities and egos and so forth. But what was it like to step into that position? Not only have to turn the revenue around, to turn around Seacrest leaving, which was, a gigantic deal, but also manage someone like Jamie and Danny. And so now you've got all these responsibilities.
So I got great advice from Roy. And that was, hey, Brad, I've got a question for you. And if, let's say a talent like came in and got up on your desk and just took a great big shit, what would you do? And I literally looked at him, and I'm just like, well, if it was a really great big shit, I would ask if they could do it again on the air, and like, don't waste the moment, man. And he looked at me and he goes, you're going to be just fine. Because, most new GMs would be like, want to rub the talent's face in it and clean this up. And how dare you? But that was Roy, right? Like what I just said was like, it made me think, but I'm like, hey, can you do that again? Right? Like that is a Roy answer. And I tried my best to do that. I don't think I always did it well. I'm going to say probably Jamie and I had a moment of tension once or 500 times, but it was all working with really talented, really smart people that wanted to win. But I realized we all want to win in a different way. And so figure out the way they want to win and help them win their game. And then they'll help you win yours, right? A little bit of servant leadership goes a long way.
I was having dinner with Damien, our friend Damien Lewis, a few weeks ago, and he told me that story. We were talking about you. Your name came up, and he was in the room.
Damien was like never more than about 6 or 7 feet, or at least earshot from Roy, which meant anywhere in the building or almost anywhere in Burbank, Damien could be, and he'd be within Roy's earshot. And so Damien is one of the good guys. And by the way, one of those people, again, that made me feel really comfortable coming up to LA. I didn't know everybody, and he knew everybody, and was like, hey, let me introduce you to so and so. And Ellen Kay was one of the most gracious people. Yes. Rick, so gracious. Let me introduce you to Nobu Matsuhisa. Like, it's like, yes, it's like I was just like, this is insane. I was living a fantasy. I was living out a fantasy.
I was too, in so many levels. I mean, I had like a $2,000 a month expense account to go to,
and if you weren't using it, they were pissed because you must not be entertaining people.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was such a great time, and you're right. I was welcomed by so many people. On the other hand, it was pressure. I mean, I remember every 10th of a point was $1 million in revenue. So you definitely felt it. By the way, I still to this day will get emails from Roy at 4 in the morning. I get up at 5, and I'll wake up and first thing I do, because I'm addicted, but I'll look at my email and he's already emailed me. I'm like, what is that?
Well, and I think that is something that was a constant through at least my time with him. And if he was to change that now, I'd be incredibly disappointed. He's not the same guy. Where is Roy? What happened to Roy, and what did you do with him?
So after being incredibly successful here in LA, you decide to move back down to San Diego to be closer to your daughter, and you are promoted to be the DOS for all 8 of the Clear Channel San Diego stations. When you went back home, were your parents still alive at that point?
Yeah, that was a gift. It was a real gift. My daughter, my ex-wife was supposed to move to Los Angeles when I moved to LA within a year, and it didn't happen. And I wasn't going to just go back to San Diego. Things were going well in LA, but I did share with Roy and Charlie and Bobby and Randy and anyone that would listen that I'm going to do this for 5 years, but then I'm going to move back to San Diego to be closer to my daughter. And if you still want to have me, great. If not, I understand. I said that early in the deal. And so I wanted to stop being a weekend dad and just seeing my daughter every other weekend. That wasn't how I saw my life. I didn't like that. And so I moved back to San Diego, and Charlie and Greg and John Hogan were incredibly helpful and paired me up with just a great guy, kind of a yin to my yang, which, by the way, is always the best. Greg Ashlock and I worked together. He was there. He was a local sales manager or no, excuse me, I was the local sales manager. He was the director of play-by-play at Dodgers Radio Network at Extra Sports 1150. You know, it was all about pairings. Like me, Greg is different than I. Greg is smart. Greg is, thoughtful. He's strategic. He's, all the things that maybe I'm not the best at. He was, and we were a great team. Jeff Thomas, same way. I got teamed up in San Diego with a guy by the name of just San Diego legend, a handshaker, baby kisser by the name of Bob Bollinger, who is just one of the best men, smart, knew everything, and humble. And I got paired up with him. He was the GM. He had relationships with Jeff and Jer and Dave Shelley and Chainsaw, and could bring them over. And as much as I might have loved that job of being market manager, I was blessed to be Bob's number 2 guy. Yeah. And
he's a San Diego legend. He was the GF when I first got my first job in 96 at KFMB, 96, 97. He was the general manager there. But what just a consummate professional. And it's a really good point that you bring up about that yin and the yang. There's this creator operator. Tim Cook and Steve Jobs had that relationship. Right. Walt Disney and Roy Disney had that relationship. And if you can find that, it's a magical combination.
Yeah, in fact, it's extraordinarily important. No one is great at everything, and I certainly am not. And so know your weaknesses, admit to them, embrace them, and find either a pairing for yourself or a pairing with someone else that gives you that sort of us together, we're bulletproof kind of thing, right? Otherwise, we're mortal. Right. But when it's a crew and it's few people each with their own unique crime fighting skills, right? That's when you become a bit bigger, and that's when 1 + 1 can equal 3.
Yeah. And that's when you win the World Series. That's when you win the Super Bowl. Absolutely.
That's right. And Bob and I did that for a number of years in San Diego. And I think we were one of the first clusters in America to actually surpass a 50 share in the market.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Bob pulled in the programming guys. He caught them and I cooked them, and that was what we did. And we went to the market. We had amazing sales reps with amazing relationships. We had amazing sales managers. They just needed a North Star. I hope I helped give some of our team that North Star. This is what we're shooting with. Hey, I think we're all underpaid. The only way we're going to make more is to kill more. Let's go, right? Like, you want to know what people make? Well, I'll tell you what people make in LA, and it's a lot more than you're making. So here's the thing. You can get a lot closer by selling digital. You can get a lot closer by selling experiences and events. You can get a lot closer because that's where the commission line is the biggest. Don't worry about these agencies. Worry about where the highest commission is, because we set that to incentivize behavior and reward you for doing good. But most of you want to just go call on an agency. What a pain in the ass. What a waste pitching someone who can only tell you no. They can't tell you yes.
Yeah.
And that to me was like, God, can you just dig that? If you can dig what I'm saying, you're going to make 50% more money next year. And a lot of our people did. And that to me, that was winning. Seeing our team make more money, period, in his story. When I looked at commission line at the end of the year and it was over the commission line of last year, it was going to piss off the company, but it was the right way of pissing off the company. It's our reps are making more money. And that's,
I can remember as Magic Johnson had said, it's almost as much work to make $100,000 as it is to make $1 million.
Oh, it's way more work. It's way more work. It really is. And so, it was sort of like, I hope I brought some of that, let's go, putting destiny in our own hands attitude into the San Diego cluster, because it was a special place, special radio stations, and are to this day. So.
You step away in 2010 and decide you're going to go out and launch your own company. What was the precipice for that move?
Yeah, I'd thought about it for probably a few years. We were in the process of selling Clear Channel to Bain and T.H. Lee Partners in a very, very large transaction. And I was lucky enough to be a part of a transition team that got to work with Bain Capital and Bain and T.H. Lee Partners, but also Bain Consulting. There was a period where they were trying to understand the business and whatnot. And, they were all about sort of leveling the playing field, let's say. A sales manager in Phoenix and San Diego should make the same amount of money because they're similar market sizes. And, this should be applied in this way in every market. And there were a lot of those principles that you should take best in practice, best in breed, and share that with other clusters and have those become adopted. But I didn't believe necessarily in because I'm a sales manager in this city, I should be paid what you're paid because we have the same job title and the same DMA size-ish. I was like, screw that. That doesn't seem particularly entrepreneurial or rewards-based. And I think some of that was getting probably out of my body and onto the company.
Yeah,
and
it's funny. I remember, so I was there at that time. I was not invited to be part of the transition team. I was invited to leave on President Obama's inauguration day in 2009. But I remember, I don't know, a handful of weeks prior, some people from Bain came through and interviewed me and asked me some questions. And they were very MBA-like. Yeah. I felt at that point, not that they were incredibly smart kids, but that there wasn't a lot of soul there. It was losing its soul in that transaction.
Really, really well said. And it was Labor Day, going into the Labor Day weekend of 2010. And Susan Karras and Debbie Wagner said to me, "Do you have a second?" And I was like, I'm the one that says to people, "Do you have a second?" I'm getting that, "Do you have a second?" And, Brad, you just, maybe this isn't working. Perhaps we should go in a different direction and everything like that. And I was like, I was absolutely stunned. However, I did think about what I was going to do next. And I came back fairly quickly with I understand and, I will work everything out. I'm going to go to work for myself and I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to call it Epic Media. I'm going to work with media companies, talent, and companies that use media and talent to help them all make more money. And they looked at me like, "How long have you been thinking about this?" And I kind of looked back like, probably about as long as you've been thinking about firing me. And so it went pretty well. I mean, there was no hard feelings. That I would never have been able to do what I'm doing today at Epic with the types of clients that I work with today if I hadn't had that 10-year amazing run with the Clear Channel Group and those people. And to this day, I think so warmly of our alma mater, Chachi.
I wasn't as graceful as you were. I didn't have it as planned out. I mean, I'm really, that is such a cool retort. I wish I had a retort. It's like a superhero answer to being fired.
I was
just like really red in the face and not sure what to do and just kind of was shell shocked by the whole entire thing. It still turned out to be,
well, look at you, dude. Look what it was your birth into entrepreneurialism, into being your own man. And that is a priceless gift.
And you are right. There's no way that I could have done it without the education that I got there it was 9 years for me. It was, certainly very, very educational. And I still came over with so many friends and colleagues such as yourself from it.
Let me put it this way. I can speak for myself. If they didn't ask me to leave, I might still be there. And I would have never have had the experiences I've had over the last 13 years. You can't make it up. One day I gotta write a book because you can't make this stuff up. You might still be, programming a couple of stations and sort of, praying to a corporate God, right? Yeah. And none of that is wrong. None of that is wrong. Yeah. But look what you've done. I've been lucky enough to catch a couple of lucky breaks. And sometimes you need to have the world change for you to accelerate in it.
So you're 100% right. And I am very grateful that it did happen. And you explained it so much more eloquently than I ever could. But I am, at the end of the day, thankful for that opportunity and everything that I learned, because I don't think I could have done, or collectively we could have done what we've done without that education.
I'm going to tell you something. Zero chance.
Tell me about Epic Consulting. Tell me a little bit about walk me through a day-to-day for you.
There are no 2 days that are alike. And so the whole idea was, what did I do at Clear Channel every day? Well, I helped the media company make more money year over year. I worked hand in hand with talent, helped them make more money. And I worked with clients to work with us to make more money. And so there was a common theme, which was help people make more money. And so I had this crazy ADD driven, probably ADHD driven idea of having these three buckets: media companies, talent, and companies that use media and talent. I figured if I could help them make more money, they wouldn't mind me making a little bit of money. And so all three of those plates, or those buckets, I spin together. Many times, oftentimes, they cross over, and I'm able to introduce a talent that I am an agent or representative for to a media company that might be looking for a guy or a gal that is like that, or working with a client that is looking to team up with the right kind of evangelist influencer. And I might be representing them, and I might then get them onto media outlets. So I just, at the heart of everything is help a man or woman make more money, and it's just going to work out. And so that's what I focus on. I focus on working with companies and individuals who are committed to making more money than they did last year or last quarter, whatever the death march drug is that they have to be on, right? And I help them do that. And it's through ideation, it's through creativity, it's through new channel development, it's through coming up with collaborations and partnerships. There is not a single client that I have that is like another client. There are no 2 days that are alike. I just love that.
We have a lot of talent that listen to this podcast, and radio talent in particular, and many of them are looking to grow beyond outside of radio. So this is kind of a two-part question. So number one, if you're an on-air talent right now, what would be the first thing that you would do to just expand your reach? What would you do to become more successful? I want to phrase this properly. You're a successful on-air talent, but what would you do now to grow in this modern era?
Immediately begin to own assets that are yours, that are outside of your deal. And whether that you need to go and get a carve out for your current deal to be able to do something that doesn't compete directly with what you're doing, but the ability to own your own media. The media companies are incredible, and they're incredibly important, especially helping people get their start. But if you are forever in the arms of a media company and you don't go and start your own YouTube channel or start your own podcast or doing something that is an adjunct to what you are doing, I think you're making a critical mistake. Another thing that, a lot of on-air talent roll their eyes at is when the company, let's call it iHeart, any company, it doesn't matter, says you need to post on social media, you need to develop a brand and footprint digitally. Well, they're absolutely right. I don't think they always give the best advice on how to do that. I think that's sometimes a disconnect, but they're absolutely correct. You must connect with consumers in a multitude of different ways. You have to connect with them through audio, through visual, through experiential. It's important to have a rounded brand. And if you are someone still doing the same stuff that is, let's just say, very program director driven, and that's what you do most of your day, I think you're going to be in for a rude awakening, because those jobs are becoming highly transactional. And there may be a day that you get a Brad and Chachi goodbye, right? and then what are you going to do? And so that would be my advice. Really develop adjunct channels, additional channels that might, even focus not the way your radio show might, but on a segment of pleasure that you get out of life. Perhaps it's fishing. Perhaps it's going to museums, right? And you do the museum podcast and you review museums all over the world, and that you go and I don't know, that was probably a stupid example, but it's like find something that is a deep passion that you can speak for a while about and go and build on that so that it's not like your radio show. Or your audio show today. Make sure that you are building your owned and operated assets.
That's amazing advice. And our good friend R-Dub is probably a good example of that. Here he took his travels and created his own micronation and expanded his Slow Jam brand way beyond. Do you think it's harder today to be a talent than it was when we first were getting in the business?
Yes and no. No, because you're told exactly what to do and don't deviate too much from it. So there's not a lot of interpretation unless you are kind of slow, right? I mean, it's do this kinds of things, don't do these things, and have it be this long. I think when we were coming up, it was harder in one way because you needed to figure out how to fill up that time and, do it in an entertaining way and whatnot, but you had less instruction and you just this isn't working, you're fired, right?
Right.
So,
right.
Now it's sort of like, it's not working, you're fired. Oh, you mean we're both fired because you're the one who told me to do it that way, right? No, just you. So, but I do think it's, it's a little bit of both but it's just different time. And, if you're in the game, you better learn how to adapt to the new field conditions, right? It's a little snowy. Well, you better learn how to play in the snow, right? You better be good at flexibility today, and not just on air, in any job. I don't care where you are, and the employee mentality of, well, I'm going to work from here today and I'm going to work from here. And, I'm the important one. That's hubris. And hubris tends to get people fired. And so be of service. Figure out how, if you're talent, to be of service to your station, your program director. That doesn't mean don't work on your stuff. It means figure out how to be of service and be gracious at the sometimes shit sandwich that you're being asked to eat. There's still calories. You just like, sometimes it's just like eat and smile. Yeah. And that's good for you. And other times you might put the sandwich down and say, we should have a conversation about this.
I follow you on Instagram. Stupendous advice, by the way. That is, the counsel you were giving out has just been absolutely remarkable on this podcast. So thank you for all that. I can see you are doing remarkably well, and I am so incredibly happy and proud of you because I know you work your ass off and you work with some amazing companies in talent. And I see you getting on the private jet, and I'm like, oh my God, this is just it's
somebody else's.
Okay, but you're still getting on one.
I just have my thumb out and I'm carrying other people's luggage, brother.
Are you, at this point in your career, are you still trying to actively grow? I'm assuming at this point that, I remember Johnny K, and I've shared this a few times, Johnny K shared with me that you want to get to a point where you've got fuck you money, that you can just, you can walk away at any point. And that was some advice that always stuck with me. And I'm not there yet. I'm at pardon me money. I'm not at fuck you money.
Yeah. I think that feels familiar.
Yeah. Are you still actively seeking new clients, new talent, or are you just kind of in a, okay. So you still have that
and
hunger.
Here's why. I'll tell you why. Because I love the hunt. I love the new experience. I love getting to know new people and figuring out what is going to help them and their family become successful, and then coming up with a strategic roadmap that we agree to, and then I go attack. I love that. I will never retire. I don't care if and when I do ever get that FU money. I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I'd probably play a little more tennis. I'd probably do a little more yoga. I would want to work with the people I'd want to work with. And I've just been really lucky to this date.
Thanks for listening to Chachi Loves Everybody. If you like the show, we hope you leave us a 5-star rating and tell your friends. Make sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This has been a Benztown McVeigh podcast production, hosted and researched by Dave Chachi Dennis, executive producer Darren Silva, producer and editor Jake Urbanik, show coordinator Estefania Padilla, marketing and distribution Suzanne Aksu and Robbie Gessel.